And in fact, and in fact, the book is filled with vindicating God. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. Correct. And what we will do is we'll do the same thing for other sections of the Bible, but right now we're sticking with Habakkuk. Anybody else got anything before we go on? Okay, so how does this text, Habakkuk, vindicate or glorify God? I have a long list, but I need you to give me what you have. Somebody start. Okay, let me ask a hard question. Okay? Are these questions how does the text demonstrate evil in the world? How does this text deal with questioning God's justness or righteousness? How does this text vindicate or glorify God? Are these questions that interest you in studying, or do you need a different method? You let me know. Because in our first many classes that we've had a lot of class participation and a lot of preparation going on. And I want to see that continue. And if I'm asking questions that are not allowing you to do that, then I need that information so I can fit this to help you, which will also help me be a better teacher. So I need you to do the homework, but if I'm not asking questions that encourage you to do that, then help me help you. Yes, Suzanne?
I've studied Habakkuk. I've tried to go through and understand what Habakkuk is doing, but you ask these questions right off the bat.
Okay.
And to me, I would have rather, for me, it would have been better if we'd had some discussion about the context of Habakkuk before we got into these kinds of things. You know, that was my feeling on it.
That is something that I questioned myself. Was I approaching this in a backwards way?
Questions, it's just, they almost came too soon.
Okay.
That's the way I felt about it, you know, but what about it?
Okay, so phrased differently, okay? Anybody else?
Yeah, we're not meaning this in any bad way. Just remember that we're in Millersville, Southern County.
Oh,
Roxton County, whichever county it is.
okay. I will rephrase the questions. Anybody else? Yes.
I was listening Wednesday night. I thought you discussed this, and from that, I got that God is the ultimate standard. Someone said that in class, and so to me, that's where you need to leave it.
Anybody else? Okay, so let's do this. And y'all thought I was going to get through at least one question this morning. Let's do an overview of Habakkuk. And then hopefully this will help as we go through these questions. Okay. Habakkuk is one of my, if not my favorite of the minor prophets. And that has something to do with my interest in philosophy. Because this is asking the question of, how can God be good if there's so much evil in the world? That's what this whole quarter is about. How can God be good if there's so much evil in the world? Now, the main argument that atheists have is God can't be, God can't exist because there is evil in the world. What Habakkuk does is it shows us evil is real. It shows us God is still good. And it shows us how to deal with evil in this sense. We just have to sometimes sit and wait while it's happening. And that's how Habakkuk ends. In some ways, Habakkuk is an extremely pessimistic book because of the way that it ends. But it helps me deal with what I don't understand for that very same reason, because of how it ends. Now, there are many theories on why there is evil in this world and how God can be good. I'm just going to give you a couple just to lay a foundation. One of them is, it's been called the Augustinian Theory or the free will theory. We have free will, therefore evil exists. There's another theory that is called the Iranian, based on a man named I cannot pronounce his name. It's Irenaeus, which is the idea of suffering helps us to learn to become more righteous. Yeah, and the Bible is filled with both of those theories. Now I'm going to give you the Perry Hall theory.
Come on.
One that nobody wants to claim.
Perry chapter 3.
Perry chapter 3. And this is something that I have done many times with various people when they're going through difficult times. And I think it fits Habakkuk. And it's these three phrases, and each one has three words. I don't know. I'm not God. Deal with it. I don't know. We can theorize, we can philosophize, we can search the scriptures, but we will never discover the answer, the one answer, as to why I am suffering my present, quote, evil. But that's what we want. We want that one answer. We want the one answer that the book of Job is searching for. Why do bad things happen to good people? Habakkuk is asking an entirely different question. Why aren't bad things happening to bad people? That's an entirely different question, right? Job, why are bad things happening to good people? Habakkuk, why aren't bad things happening to bad people? And then God's going to say, well, bad things will happen. You see, that when you look at Habakkuk chapter 1, how long, Lord, must I call for help, and you do not listen, or cry to you about violence, and you do not save? I don't know. Okay? So Perry Hall's theory on the problem of pain and evil begins with, I don't know. Habakkuk is asking that question. God, why aren't you answering me? I don't know why you're not answering me. Let's keep going. Why do you force me to look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Oppression and violence are right in front of me. Strife is ongoing and conflict escalates. I don't know, God. That's what this is dealing with. I don't know. This is why the law is ineffective and justice never emerges. For the wicked restrict the righteous, therefore justice comes out perverted. How do I change this? What's the answer? I don't know. We've got to keep going. The next one is, after I don't know, what's the next three-word phrase in Perry Hall's theory of dealing with evil? I'm not God. Okay, let's see that. The next one, starting verse 5. This is God answering. Look at the nations and observe, be utterly astounded. For I am doing something in your days that you will not believe when you hear about it. Look, I am raising up Chaldeans, that's the Babylonians, that bitter, impetuous nation that marches across earth's open spaces to seize territories not its own. They are fierce and terrifying. Their views of justice and sovereignty stem from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards and more fierce than wolves of the night. Their horsemen charge ahead. Their horsemen come from distant lands. They fly like eagles, swooping to devour. All of them come to do violence. Their faces are set in determination. They gather prisoners like sand. They mock kings and rulers are a joke to them. They laugh at every fortress. They build siege ramps to capture it. Then they sweep by the land and pass through. They are guilty. Their strength is their God. I'm not God. Habakkuk is not God, but that's God's answer. Well, let's see what Habakkuk's response is. Are you not from eternity, Lord, my God, my Holy One? You will not die. Lord, you appointed them to execute judgment. My rock, you destined them to punish us. Your eyes are too pure to look on evil, and you cannot tolerate wrongdoing. So why do you tolerate those who are treacherous? Why are you silent? Which one who is wicked swallows up one who is more righteous than himself? This goes back to, I don't know, God. You have made mankind like the fish of the sea, like marine creatures that have no ruler. The Chaldeans pull them all up with a hook, catch them in their dragnet, and capture them or gather them in their fishing net. That is why they are glad and rejoice. That is why they sacrifice to their dragnet and burn incense to their fishing net. For by these things their portion is rich and their food is plentiful. God, why don't bad things happen to those bad people? He's saying, I don't know. Will they therefore empty their net and continually slaughter nations without mercy? And the very next verse, which is found in chapter 2, verse 1, should go in chapter 1. I will stand at my guard post and station myself on the lookout tower. I will watch to see what he will say to me and what I should reply about my complaint. I don't know. I'm not God, but that's God's response. After God gives his response, Habakkuk, does he now know? No. He still doesn't know. It doesn't make sense to him. How could God use a more wicked nation, the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, to punish a less wicked nation? That just throws Habakkuk for a theological, spiritual loop. The answer will be, don't worry, Habakkuk. I'm going to punish them too. So don't think that they're getting off. Don't think that they're going to escape. My justice, my righteousness will prevail. Even though I'm using a more wicked nation to punish the less wicked, in God's eyes, are they both wicked? Yeah. And that is how why can God use a more wicked nation to destroy a less wicked one? Because God is wicked. Both nations are wicked. Somehow I got out of that, so I don't know. Okay. Both nations are wicked. But what I love about Habakkuk is chapter 2, verse 1, like I said, belongs to chapter 1. It's saying, God, I'm going to wait. Still doesn't make sense to me. Somebody got the New American Standard? Anybody here? Okay. Jared, read Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 1 in the New American Standard. Okay. This version says, how I should reply about my complaint. The New American Standard says, how I should reply when I am reproved. The idea there is Habakkuk admits the second part to Perry Hall's theory on the problem of evil. I'm not God. He doesn't throw doubt upon God's holiness. He doesn't say, I've got to be more holy than God. So it starts off with, God, why is all this happening? I don't know. Then we move to, I'm not God. And he recognizes that. In other words, he keeps himself in his place. But he's asking all kinds of questions, isn't he? Make a list of all the questions in Habakkuk. Look at all those. How long, Lord, must I call for help and you do not listen? Or cry out to you about violence and you do not save? The very first thing he does, he asks God a question. He's complaining to God. He's saying, I don't know. But he recognizes, look at that question. How long, Lord, must I call for help? He recognizes God is the help, and you do not listen. Or cry out about violence, and you do not save. He realizes God is the Savior. So, the first part of Perry Hall's theory on the problem of evil and pain is, I don't know. The second one is what? I'm not God. The third one is deal with it. And how does Habakkuk deal with it? He waits. That's right. What was that?
Just continues on.
And he continues on. Absolutely. So, does he continue to talk to God about it? Yeah. So he doesn't give up. So his way of dealing with it is, I'm going to talk to God about this. His way of dealing with it is, I'm going to wait because I know that God is above me. And the way that it ends, everybody turn to Habakkuk chapter 3. Well, let me go back just a second. Okay, that is chapter 1. Chapter 2 contains a more thorough answer than chapter 1. Because chapter 1 is, I'm using this more wicked nation to destroy the less wicked nation. Now, I want you to notice, yes?
Just a quick question. I noticed down at, I think it was chapter 1, verse 5, where he tells us he will be utterly surprised
Yes.
of what he's being told.
Yes.
It sounds like God had a plan or something that's fixing to happen and go on, and he's telling them, just wait, hold on, man. Look what's about to happen.
That's exactly right. And he's also telling them, when you see it, it still won't make sense to you. Now, I want you to notice the change in Habakkuk. He starts off with chapter 1, verse 2. complaining about who? In verses 2 through 4. Who's he complaining about who is so evil? Yeah, his fellow Jews. God, how can you not punish all these people? Who is he not including in that? Himself. That's important for when we get to the end. So, God, how can you not punish all of these people? God says, I'm going to. But I'm going to do it with a people that you're going to not believe that I'm going to use. Beyond your understanding. I don't know. I'm not God. Deal with it. And then after the answer is, I'm going to use these Chaldeans, then all of a sudden, God's people aren't that wicked. Did you notice that? The people, the Jews, can't be that wicked compared to these people. So God, I don't understand. We're more righteous than them. That's his point. Point is, both are wicked. And we don't have a standard as other people. So that's exactly what Habakkuk is doing. So what's chapter 2? God gives these woes. It's God's second answer. And if you look at starting in chapter 2, verse 2, the Lord answered me, write down this vision. Clearly inscribe it on tablets so one may easily read it. Does God say, write it down on the tablets so one may easily understand it? No. A herald is a proclaimer, one who speaks out. You could actually use the word herald as a substitute for the word preacher. They mean the same thing. So here we have all of these guarantees from God that these wicked people will be punished. And he gives various people who are going to be punished.
Run.
Where?
In verse 2 it says that the one who reads it may run.
That's the Gerald and grandmother.
Okay, because that is actually the literal reading in the Hebrew. Run with it. And apparently what the translators thought that meant was to read it. Maybe he was going to run with it to give to the people. Not run away. No.
Act on it.
Yeah, he's going to act on it. Run with it. I'm going to give this to you. Then you run to the people so that they can read it. So here we got the evils that are going on. Chapter 2. Woe to him who amasses what is not his. How much longer? And loads himself with goods taken in pledge. Won't your creditors suddenly rise up and those who disturb you wake up? Then you will become spoil for them. Since you have plundered many nations, all the peoples who remain will plunder you because of human bloodshed and violence against lands, cities, and all who live in them. So the first woe is on those that take advantage of other people. Is that still happening today? This whole idea against creditors. In Hebrew law, what I mean by Hebrew law given to the nation of Israel, was a Israelite / Jew allowed to charge interest to other Israelites or Jews? Don't think so. I could be wrong. If you can find that I'm wrong, I will be happy to admit it. They could use credit against non-Israelites, but they could not use credit against their own people. But did they? Yes. chapter 2, verse 9, the second woe. And this is the exact opposite of the Beatitudes, which we will be studying in one class. Woe to him who dishonestly makes wealth for his house, to place his nest on high, to escape the grasp of disaster. You have planned shame for your house by wiping out many people, again, taking advantage of other people. Chapter 2, verse 3, the third woe. Woe to him who builds a city with bloodshed and founds a town with injustice. The same idea of taking advantage of other people, and this time not doing it through monetary means, but rather doing it through the courts. Does that still happen today? Yes. Have you ever heard or seen somebody who was just so interested in suing everybody? Nothing new, people. Look at the fourth woe, verse 15. Woe to him who gives his neighbors drink, pouring out your wrath and even making them drunk in order to look at their nakedness. Do people today still get other people drunk or give them drugs or drop little pills in their alcohol? Yes, still happens today. The fifth woe. Woe to him, verse 19, who says to wood, wake up, idolatry. And so people have false idols today, even though it might not be in a statue form. Even though down the road, does that hurt your eyes and your soul when you pass those idols? It does me. So chapter 1 is, I don't know. Okay, God, I'm not you. And he's dealing with it by waiting and asking questions. And then chapter 3 is the third prayer. And it starts off with a prayer of the prophet Habakkuk. Lord, I have heard the report about you. Lord, I stand in awe of your deeds. Revive your work in these years. Make it known in these years. In your wrath, remember mercy. But you remember how I told you at the beginning, Habakkuk is saying, God, why don't you punish these people? Look how Habakkuk ends. I heard and I trembled within. My lips quivered at the sound. Rottenness entered my bones. I trembled where I stood. Now I must quietly wait for the day of distress to come against the people invading us. Though the fig tree does not bud, and there is no fruit on the vines, though the olive crop fails, and the fields produce no food, though the flocks disappear from the pen, and there are no herds in the stalls. Okay, is life going good or bad right now? Going bad. Yet, I will celebrate in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. The Lord, my Lord. You have your translations where the first Lord is in small caps. That is Yahweh. My Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like those of a deer, enables me to walk on mountain heights. And that's how it ends. Is Habakkuk going to escape the punishment that the people of his nation are going to receive? No. And he accepts that. So Perry Hall's theory, I know it's not very fancy. I don't know. That's what Habakkuk says. God, I don't know why you're not doing something about this. The second one is, I'm not God. Okay, God, you explained it to me and you said I won't understand, and you're right, I don't understand. Deal with it. I'm going to keep on praying. I'm going to keep on asking questions. I know I'm going to suffer too. But in all this, I'm going to celebrate. That's how I deal with it. Do you find that theory of how to deal with evil helpful? I don't know. I'm not God. Deal with it. Questions, comments, disagreements? Janet.
I think that we need to be aware that we have within us this hubris of thinking in some crazy way that we have brains and that our abilities are so great that we can understand God's mind.
Our children can't even understand the parent's mind. Frank.
And then, Jared, did you have
Your hand raised too?
Okay. Go ahead, Brian.
Are you ready? No, go ahead, Frank. Well, Paul tells us in prayer, you hinted at this a while ago. Paul taught us there that people that compare themselves by themselves and measure themselves by themselves are not wise.
Yep.
So when we do that, we're looking on our level and we're not up to God's level.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy, bless his heart, I'll never forget it. When somebody would come up to him with one of those questions that nobody would answer, he said, you really need to think about that because I believe you're whittling on God's end of the stick.
Yep.
That was his favorite little paraphrase. And when you're settled in your mind that God has something that we don't, life gets a lot simpler.
Jared?
I think for Habakkuk, he's coming from the right perspective initially, which is that God is great, therefore why are these bad things happening? Whereas maybe a more modern approach, maybe one who's more of a skeptic would say, all these bad things are happening, therefore how can you say God is great?
Yep.
And it's a very different approach, and I think having that
I want to switch to a different file.
that different approach is how Habakkuk is able to reason. He's able to grasp with these things because he's coming first and foremost from the perspective that God is great. And then he's dealing with all of the evil. And that's maybe more, that's maybe a little bit more aligned with the classical view that we were talking about before, this Augustinian view, this idea that we're going to assume God's great. We're starting with that. We're not questioning that. We're just asking, why does this stuff happen? If Habakkuk were questioning his faith, he would come from, I see all this stuff happening, where's God in it? I think this is a very different approach, and I think that more often nowadays we see people coming from the other direction.
Janet, your hand was raised?
It's also a goal of what you just said, keeping in mind that in the Old Testament, I think over 150 times the term loving kindness is used in reference to God, God's loving kindness. And I think that we forget that at times.
Yeah. When we look at the question of evil,
Who defines evil? Is it God or is it society? Or is it an individual? you will discover that even those that do not believe in a God, they will admit, if you press them, that everyone doing what is right in their own eyes, the book of Judges, which we will look at probably in this study also, is not a standard by which anyone can live. Not all evil is suffering, and suffering is not inescapable, because even God suffers. But here's where I really wanted to go to. The problem of evil or pain refers to the challenge of reconciling belief in an omnipotent. What's the definition of omnipotent? All powerful. Omnibenevolent. What's the definition of omnibenevolent? All loving. And it says benevolent twice. Omniscient. What's that mean? All knowing. Omnipresent.
Everywhere.
Okay, everywhere. So if God is all good, all powerful, all knowing, and all everywhere, how can there be evil in the world? Yes, Mike.
Well, God told us that's who He is, and maybe recommended that we believe that and glorify and worship Him because He is God. He told us, or He told the Israelites in this discussion, through Abraham and Moses, what He wished they would become. And they didn't. He also told them that their life would be miserable if they didn't. The evil that I think that Habakkuk is recognizing is the evil within Israel will be addressed by the evil in the world.
Say that last part again.
The evil in Israel that he's recognizing is what caused the problem in the first place, because Israel is the only nation that the law applies to.
One of the points that I believe it's in Isaiah goes along with that, which is that Israel existed to be a light to the nations as to what is right and wrong, good and bad, righteous and unrighteous.
Go set an example.
They did not, but Jesus came and became that light. And the problem of evil is the main reason why people don't believe in God today. And it goes along with this. If God exists, and then they just grant the God of the Bible that we're talking about, all-powerful, all-knowing, and morally perfect. And if God is omnipotent, then has the power to eliminate all evil. If God is omniscient, then God knows when evil exists. If God is morally perfect, then God has the desire to eliminate all evil. Evil exists. If evil exists and God exists, then either God doesn't have the power to eliminate all evil, or doesn't know when evil exists, or doesn't have the desire to eliminate all evil, or therefore God doesn't exist. This is the main reason why people don't believe in God. But one of the points that I wanted to get in this class for this quarter is we have to learn how to deal with this, and I'll give you a very simple reason or illustration. Have you ever known somebody who went through pain and suffering and then all of a sudden just decided to stop going to church? That's why this topic is important. Because this is not some highfalutin theological, philosophical topic that doesn't affect us in everyday ways. I love discussing it in a philosophical, theological, highfalutin way. I find that fascinating. But I need, and you need, to look at this practically. Which goes back to, repeat with me, the Perry Hall's theory on how to deal with the problem of evil. The first three-word phrase is, I don't know. The second one is, I'm not God. The third one is, you see how Habakkuk does all those three things? I will rewrite the questions. But I'm hoping that that way of looking at it helps us all get prepared and helps us prepare other people, because I came up with this when somebody was going through difficult time. Frank.
If the atheist then reasons this way, and therefore God doesn't exist, do atheists hold to the sanctity of marriage?
They believe in a standard, they just
Will say it's practical more than anything. But here, I'll share with you what is one of the flaws within this. That doesn't prove that God doesn't exist. It just proves, let me rephrase it. You could have an omnipotent, omniscient, and morally imperfect God and just have an evil God out there. But see, atheists have a need to believe in a good God, don't they? That's why they won't accept the possibility, generally, that there is a God who is just evil. And I've called them on that. I said, you need to believe in a good God. They said, that's ridiculous. I don't believe in a God at all. I said, you don't believe in a God because you need to believe in a good God. But I asked one atheist one time, I said, none of this disproves that God exists, because according to your theory, God could just be evil. And they said, that is correct. Maybe God is evil. I don't know. There's a lot I don't know either. But I'm not God. I deal with it through prayer and waiting and knowing I too will suffer. Mike, you have the last word.
Told us everything we need to know to have eternal life with him. But he did not tell us everything.
Deuteronomy 29:29.
Anybody know what that says? The secret things belong to God. So I will send out new questions, reworded, and everybody will do them because we all need to be prepared. Thank you very much.